Hey guys, and welcome to 2022 Electric Boogaloo. No, I don't. We are here to do a wrap-up of a thing that we started last year where we created a reading challenge. If you didn't know, I will link the original video down below. The rough idea of that was that we wanted to challenge ourselves to read more diversely, specifically in the books that we read together for the channel. So you may know that every once in a while on Fridays a video comes out with Gretchen and I both talking about the same book or books, and we did not stick exclusively to the challenges, meaning that we read books outside of the challenges, but we wanted to create some challenges for ourselves when it came to diversity in that reviewing, not just reviewing the same thing over and over again. So we're here today to talk about how we did last year and also look to this year, and that yes, we are going to be doing it again, and we'll talk about those challenges as well as the books that we read and possibly talk about some of those videos that we did.
All right, so the first prompt that I'm going to talk about, and this is in no particular order, is reading a nonfiction book by a BIPOC author. And as you may or may not know, I do love me some nonfiction, and I really wanted Michaela to read some with me, and that only worked out so well. The book that we chose for this was Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi. This is an amazing book about the history of slavery and the enslaved in America, like literally from start to now. I was about to say finished, but read the book and you'll know that's the wrong word to use. I listened to this entire thing, and Michaela is still working her way through it because this is an incredible book, but it is also a dense book. It is the kind of book that you have to commit to really just like absorbing that information. And so again, it's something we both committed to. I finished, Michaela is still working her way through it, but it had the intended effect. It got us both reading it and talking about it, even if we didn't review it for the channel.
Our second challenge was to read a book by or about a non-binary person. We actually ended up reading two different books for this challenge. I just hit myself in the face with one of the strings on my hoodie. Don't worry about it. We ended up reading two books for this challenge. The first book we read was Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, which I had heard there is a non-binary character in, and there is, but that character is barely in the book. We thought about maybe reading the other books in that series and making this part of a different challenge later on, which we then did something different with as well. So that never became the pick for that challenge. But then we did read River of Teeth by Sarah Gailey, which has a non-binary character front and center the whole time. We did a whole video on that, and highly recommend that book because westerns riding hippos, hippo westerns, it's worth a look at that book, and also just go watch us have fun talking about it in that video.
So super cool that we read two books for that prompt, because third prompt that we had on here was to read 3 Rick Riordan Presents books, and we read 2. So it is a 2/3 completed challenge, unless you count which ones we reviewed, in which case it is a 1/3 completed challenge. We read and reviewed an arc of Grace Kim's The Last Fallen Star, and you can watch that entire video for more, but that is a Korean mythology inspired book that we thought had promise but also had some issues. But you can go ahead and check out that review if you're interested. We also technically read and reviewed Arushat and the End of Time by Roshni Chokshi. I have talked about Roshni Chokshi ad nauseum in several videos. I think she's a fabulous, fabulous author, but I've mostly and only read her YA stuff. So reading a middle grade book with Indian mythology, which is really incredible. We did film a review for that, and then some video files mysteriously went missing when Michaela accidentally deleted them off her computer. So you never saw that in real life, but we did talk about it, and we did enjoy it, and maybe someday it'll be resurrected like a ghost, brought back to life, a zombie really. We planned to read Stormrunner by J.C. Cervantes. We didn't get to it. Maybe someday we will, but the Rick Riordan Presents books in general are amazing and fantastic. We highly recommend getting your hands on any of them and having some fun with it.
The next challenge we completed and reviewed the book for. We did it! It was to read a book translated into English, and we read The Perfect Nine by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. We have a whole video up about that. This one was technically an epic poem that was both written and translated into English by the author, so that was an interesting take as well, because usually translated books are translated by someone other than the author, so that was there. This was supposed to be a feminist retelling of a classic story, and we had questions about what feminist means when it comes to that text, so if you want to hear us talk about that in more detail, go watch that video.
For the next prompt, we also read and reviewed the book, and then I went a little bit psycho about it. So this prompt was to read a YA book. As you, again, may know, normally that's my thing, but over last year I had some problems reading YA. It just wasn't clicking with me as per usual, and it's not always Michaela's thing, so we added this on there, and we read The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This is the first book in a trilogy called The Folk of the Air. It is a YA fantasy where a human girl ends up trapped in fairy and tries to survive the political world there while also falling for the fairy prince, or one of them. It's kind of toxic, their relationship. We talk about it more in our review. And then I went cuckoo because I thought the first book had a lot of promise and I like Holly Black. So I then went on and read the entire trilogy, and the third book in particular made me lose my ever-loving mind. It was so weird. So you can not only see our joint review of the first book, but then watch me completely fly off a cliff with the series in that series review. So I don't know, enjoy that, I guess.
The next challenge was to read a second chance book, which is a book where we have read something from the author previously that we either thought was like okay or didn't get, like, had potential but didn't really get to where we wanted it to see if it improved on itself. And we did actually complete this challenge. We haven't posted the video yet, but that will be coming within the next couple of months, because we're actually going to film that video today after this. You'll never know. It'll just show up at some point in the future and you'll just be like, what? Here's that video that they were talking about. But we read Vespertine by Margaret Rogerson. You may be like, you've never talked about a Margaret Rogerson book before, and that's because we never actually were able to post a review of the first book that we read from her, Sorcery of Thorns, because it was meh and we didn't have anything to say. But that makes it a perfect second chance book, and we both read Vespertine, and there will be a discussion of that at some point. So there you go.
So the next prompt was to read an entire series, whether it was a trilogy or a duology. I really love when Michaela and I can crack down into a whole series and really like parse out how it, you know, evolves or devolves over the course of 3 books. And we were originally planning, after reading the Robin Hobb book that Michaela mentioned, reading that whole trilogy. That didn't pan out, and then we really randomly read what we thought was the entire trilogy of Scarlett St. Clair's Hades X Persephone series, starting with A Touch of Darkness, which you may have seen on the Book Talk. What we didn't realize is that that series is actually a quartet, at least, and book 4 has not yet been released. We're still gonna call it though, because we read all 3 books that exist in the world, and we did a whole series review on that. We definitely had issues with this series. There was some violence against women stuff that unfortunately both evolved and devolved throughout all 3 books. It's a bit of a longer video, but we had a lot of fun discussing it and really digging into that series, so yay, I guess.
The next challenge was to read an arc and review it on time, which we're going to see a repeat here. We did for The Last Fallen Star by Gracie Kim. We had an arc of that one. We read it the week it came, we reviewed it the week it came out. We read it before that. So we nailed that challenge. We read an arc and reviewed it on time. We have read other arcs since then. reviewing them on time is the sticking point. So let's see how that goes going forward. But we do that pretty regularly. It's not a hard challenge. It was just the on time part was the pin in that challenge, and we did do it. So we read The Last Fallen Star by Gracie Kim on time, and we've already talked about that video, so you've seen it.
So it will not shock you that one of my major contributions to this list was adding a romance novel. And in specific, we wanted to add a Own Voices LGBTQIA plus romance. And we read Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellefleur. This was a very interesting sapphic romance. And I had some issues and Michaela had some issues, but I also apparently didn't have enough issues because I also read the second book in the series, which was just meh. So I find it really funny when we make a review and we're like, I had these issues, and I'm like, but I'm still going to read the next one. Because sometimes there are books where you have issues so you don't read the next one, and books where you're like, but... We are also considering doing the third book in this series, which the second book was not sapphic, but the third book is. So this may also be a recurring theme for 2022. You never know. This is Betwixt the Books. Consistency is not our middle name. Our middle name is The.
On that note, the only challenge that we fully, completely failed, like neither of us read anything, we've tried multiple times in both DNF'd books, was to read a book centering a religion other than Christianity. Just a fail on our part, fully fail. We never finished, neither of us finished a book. There was no review for you because neither of us finished a book. But saying that and taking this challenge and looking into next year, part of what we wanted to do was to second chance ourselves with some of the prompts that we didn't do so well with. So this is going to be one of the challenges that we have to do next year, which is again to read a book centering a religion other than Christianity. So a book that centers Jewish or Islamic or I don't know, Hindu, other characters, religions like really there and at the forefront. So just so you know, we did completely fail that one. Complete fail. But I think overall, we did a really good job, and this did diversify our reading, and that was the point of this, and it also gave us some parameters when it came to choosing books to read together, other than just, I saw this and thought of you and sending it to each other, which is what we normally do, of like, maybe we can read this. It gave us a little bit more of a structure when it came to our joint reviews. But now, let's turn and look to the future. The first challenge being a book centering a religion other than Christianity, because we have to complete this challenge at some point. If you were wondering, some of the challenges from last year that we really enjoyed, we are going to be bringing back. So some of the other challenges on top of reading a book that centers a religion other than Christianity is going to be read an arc and review it on time, because the on time part still gets us and we got to do it. We're also bringing back to read an Own Voices LGBTQIA plus romance, because that was fun. Reading a book translated into English, because again, that's something that's important to me and is a fun, more diversity thing. We are also going to try to read an entire series again, whether that be a duology, a trilogy, whatever, because we do enjoy talking about an author's works more on a spectrum of like how they've changed over time, and reading a series is a great way to do that. And then the last challenge that we are going to repeat is to do a second chance book again, because a lot of the times you will hear us do a review and have us say, like, we wanted more, we wanted this to be better, and reading a second chance book is a great way to promote that, to basically say, hey, this is an author that we have our eye on, and even though we didn't fully love this book, there is a potential for more, so reading a second chance book is always going to be good challenge for us.
In the service of getting us to read, you know, more widely and diversely, both in content and format, we have added this year as a new category to read a graphic novel. This is something that Michaela does far more consistently than I do. I'm not sure if I've read one since either the last time we reviewed one, or like maybe I had to do one for my master's degree, unknown. I do enjoy them most of the time. They're just not my preferred format. But there are a lot of really interesting and wonderful things happening in this genre, and so by adding this into the mix, I think that we'll be able to read something that Michaela really loves and enjoys, and I enjoy when I get around to but don't often read, and just explore this ever-evolving and really interesting part of books.
A tweak on an old challenge. This year we are going to try and read an anti-racist nonfiction book. This is because I failed to finish Stamped. We needed to bring that back as well. Just in general, I don't read enough nonfiction. Gretchen reads a lot. Same sort of vein of I should read more. I last year I think 15% of my reading was nonfiction, and it was mostly forced for the BookTube Awards. I chose to read nonfiction for that, and I never did a video on any of those books. I have a hard time reviewing nonfiction when I do read it, so we're adding that in as a challenge as well. We just made it a little bit wider of a net to give us more options of things to do. So an anti-racist nonfiction book.
Another challenge that we're adding into this one is that, we've noticed that when we review books that are big on the book talk, y'all seem, for whatever reason, to really enjoy those reviews. And it is also, a lot of those are YA books, or they're romance books, or they're YA romance books. And that is something that we really enjoy sometimes. And so we just want to, try to stay cool, hip, neato. I don't book talk. Michaela book talks. So everything that I've managed to review that was or is a book talk phenomenon is purely accidental. So this will be a little bit more targeted to say, people seem to really be enjoying this book. Let's read it and review it and see if we agree. And we may have already picked this book. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it might be called Iron Widow. We'll see. Again, consistency, not our middle name. But I do have that book from the library, and I may have force renewed it once with my all-seeing powers as a librarian, so maybe I should read that or return it.
Last year, for one of my picks, we read a book that was with a non-binary protagonist. This year, I would like to read a book with an ace protagonist. So another queer identifier that I have, I would like us to read more representation of, and definitely one that is underrepresented in popular books that people talk about. So we're gonna hopefully read a book that has an ace protagonist and talk about that one. Because I didn't have that representation growing up. It just didn't exist, and being able to talk about and spread that representation for people is helpful, in my opinion. So reading a book with an ace protagonist is another new challenge this year.
So that is all 10 of the prompts that we would like to do this year. If you lost track, are confused, we do have a list that in a reading challenge that you can join on Storygraph, which we will link down below in the video. We do, however, have two 1A and 1B bonus prompts. And one of the reasons that Betwixt the Books is so amazing is that Michaela and I are very avid readers, but we often have different interests, or we pick out different things in books. So when we read the same book, it makes a really rich review. But sometimes that means that we are reading books where we're trying to meet each other in the middle, which means that some of our favorite genres sometimes get left to the side. So for example, Michaela really, really loves horror and thriller. I do not. So for this 1A and 1B bonus challenge, we want to challenge each other to read books outside of our comfort zone. So 1A being, I would challenge Michaela to read something outside of her comfort zone, maybe a different kind of nonfiction book, or a YA book that I know is really bad or something. And she would challenge me to read something outside of my comfort zone, such as a horror or thriller novel. We're not trying to torture the other person. We're just trying to talk about a genre that we don't necessarily read together very much, but is very important to each other, that we can have a conversation about. And I think that'll be really interesting. So unknown exactly how or when we'll complete that prompt, but we are excited to give it a try and continue to push each other and delve more into what makes Betwixt the Book such a great channel. So again, if you would like to join us on this reading challenge, or just see what books we're potentially looking at using for these challenge prompts, check it out on Storygraph. If you don't already have a Storygraph account, get one. It's amazing and blows Goodreads out of the water, and it's also not owned by Amazon. Hurrah! Please, if you have comments on any of the books that we did read, or books that you think might meet past prompts or future prompts, give us suggestions down below. We always love to hear your recommendations, or just, say hi. Happy 2022, everybody. Let's get reading.